Hello, welcome to the Raw podcast. I'm your host, James Copley, and I'm joined today by Simon Ramsden, ex-Sunderland player. How are you doing, mate?
Very well, thank you. Yourself?
Aye, not too bad. Pleased that the transfer window's over and we can concentrate on the football, to be honest with you.
That's it, mate. And I mean, it's a shame we didn't get a striker in hindsight, but
It is. It is. We'll touch on that a bit. We'll touch on that a bit later. I want to talk about your debut, Simon. To be honest, I know you're a massive Sunderland fan like myself. Saturday, January 24th, 2004, which was the first season I actually started attending games
right.
as a kid. You came off the bench against Ipswich in the FA Cup. As a Sunderland fan, what is that like? It must be pretty surreal looking back on it now.
Do you know what it is like? It's one of them. See, if you made a start, I suppose you'd be very nervous, and the night before I probably wouldn't have been able to sleep, and the build up and letting your family know and tickets and all that, I suppose. But I really wasn't expecting to get on. Like I say, I'd been on the bench a few times that season, travelling in the squads, maybe just missing out. And I think it was Daz Willie. Obviously, you're out warming up and stuff, but you just don't expect to get on. As a defender, you're not going to come on and change the game, are you? Or you need an injury, really. So, fortunately or unfortunately for Darren Williams, I suppose, he picked up a niggle at the end of the match. And I says you're going on. So I didn't really have too much time to think about it. And I was only on for a few minutes. So I can't really remember that much about it, to be honest. It just went quite quick. We were 2-0 up and we just seen the game out. But it's what dreams are made of, isn't it?
Absolutely. Did you realise, stupid question for me really, but did you realise then, or did you think then that this could be like my only appearance at Sunderland? I guess that wasn't in your head at the time, was it?
It wasn't, no, because like I say, that season, Mick McCarthy was spot on with me, and I was training every day with the first team there or thereabouts, travelling to games, and I think with that being in, did you say January, the match? So
January 24th, yeah.
Yeah, so you're obviously thinking, still a few months of the season left, I want a little bit more of this, but the problem is, as a young lad coming through, it's a bit different when the club were in League One the last few years, but it's so hard to get a game or break through unless you're obviously next level and what have you. And I always just seem to have either one or two players ahead of me. So unfortunately, I didn't get another opportunity.
Were you pretty unlucky with injuries as well, Simon? Because you were flying at one point, pretty close to breaking in. You were going on pre-season tours, and you just suffered a few setbacks, didn't you?
Oh, I've had loads, mate. Honestly, it's been the story of my life. I don't know. Like I say, yeah, I think at Sunderland I had a few ankle problems, but moving on from there throughout my career, it's been one of them unfortunate things. I think one of my downfalls is I like to get stuck in, I suppose. So you do end up picking up a few injuries along the way. I've had some strange ones, like a neck operation, 2 hips, knees, ankles, the lot. But yeah, that's a frustrating part of being a player. You just want to get out there every week, and when that's taken away from you, it's devastating.
That team or squad that you were involved with, that you made your debut, there was sort of Marpoom, Williams, you mentioned, Jason McAteer, Jeff Whitley, Julio Arca, Kevin Kyle. Who were the sort of the main characters that stand out for you in the dressing room from that period?
I wouldn't say that specific period there was anybody that like majorly jumped out. We're just a team of, there's no stars. Julio Arca obviously was probably the most high profile or the most talented player, but there wasn't any like big time Charlies. Everyone was just good lads, put a shift in and done really well. I think going back before that, when I was first around the first team and breakthrough, you had some massive characters like your Quinese Phillips, your Kevin Balls, your Mickey Grays. That was the best era for me. It was amazing just being around, I suppose, the players that I watched on the terraces, being alongside them. So I would look back on that era probably more fondly.
And what was that era like? Obviously, you mentioned coming up under Peter Reid. He seems like a massive figure at Sunderland. You know, he was at the club for so long. What are your early memories of him? Because he was quite the disciplinarian at points, wasn't he?
Yeah. My early memories are just, I don't know, everybody was just a bit fearful of him, I think. Like, there was a lot of respect. But I'm even talking like the first team lads. Like, like in football now, like younger lads, they're not really bothered about anything. Like, not saying that they haven't got respect, but like Peter Reid would walk through the first team change room, it'd go quiet. And I'm talking about lads that's played 300-400 games, just because maybe a little bit in awe of him, or I don't know. He just had that aura about him, which commanded respect. So that was my first sort of memory when I think about him, is probably thinking I really want to impress him, but I also don't want to get on the wrong side of him as a young lad.
Yeah, and he had Saxton as well alongside him, who was just as colourful a character.
He was, and like I say, he could lose it just as much as Reedy. But on the flip side of that, Sacco was one of the ones that would come in and like have a laugh, and do you know what I mean? They just worked perfectly together. Like been said many times, good cop, bad cop, and they just had it off to a T. They both had the utmost respect from all the players, and that's how obviously the club done so well around that period.
Were there any points with Reedy, with yourself, or any of the other players that you witnessed where you thought, oh, I might be in trouble, or somebody else is in trouble here?
Yeah, I mean, I remember he used to pop into the digs. We all lived on the seafront at Roker. There was like 20 of us or something. And to me, being a Sunderland fan, it was Reedy. Like, it's not Gaffer, which is a little bit strange for me, getting used to calling the players like whatever, when you're used to like singing the names on the terraces and that, aren't you? So
yeah, absolutely.
I remember calling him Pete, digs, which didn't go down too well, to be honest with you. And for the first 2 or 3 months after that, I think the first team started nicknaming me Pete, just winding me up, because they were just like in stitches about that, me calling him that as well. But I don't know, it was just like a nervous reaction. All the young lads just didn't want to say anything.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's one of them, you live and you learn, don't you, as you get older.
Football's changed a lot from back then, though. As an apprentice or a young player, it'll have been completely different for you. You'll have been cleaning boots and in the changing rooms and stuff. To compare that to the path Dan Neil or an Anthony Patterson's taken now, they'll have had a very different upbringing to you.
Yeah, and you know what? I wouldn't change it for the world, because I don't know. It gives you a good grounding. Like, I think when I left school, you think, I'm not saying you think you're the bee's knees, but like, to me, like, a sign for Sunderland, I thought, this is amazing. Like, all my dreams have come true, on top of the world, but you straight away get brought back down to earth. You're cleaning boots, cleaning toilets, doing all the jobs that people don't get to see. It's not just kicking a football about, which a lot of people presume it is. And I don't know. I don't think the young lads get that now. Do they even clean boots? Or I don't know. Like I say, things have changed. I don't think it's for the better, personally. I think there was a stepping stone of, I mean, we were on peanuts. I think my first YTS, I was on £40-odd a week, struggling to get by. And the aim was to progress, to get a professional contract, to then make the first team. If you got a win bonus, it was like the best thing ever. Whereas now, I think a lot of the younger lads don't really appreciate that. They get money before they've even made it in the first team. And I just don't think the hunger's there like it was when we were young lads.
What was the transition at the club like from Peter Reid to, obviously, then Howard Wilkinson came in, then you had Mick McCarthy, well, I suppose Mick McCarthy and Peter Reid are quite similar, quite straight talking, but you had Wilkinson in between. It's a bit of, it was a tough period for the club, the end of the Reedy years, and then Wilkinson and then Mick coming in. You had that bounce in the 2004 season, but then there was the relegation from the Premier League as well.
Yeah, I missed a little bit of it because I was out on loan for a season. So
Notts County.
Yeah, when Peter Reid got sacked, I was actually on loan. So I was there for pre-season. Obviously, Reedy was in charge. I went to Notts County for a full year. So Howard Wilkinson came in and had been sacked before I'd even returned from Notts County.
So you didn't get a save at all?
So I never. Do you know what? I don't know. I don't really know the man, but he never even rang me once to see how I was getting on at Notts County, or as far as I'm aware, I don't even know if he sent anybody down to watch me. I don't know. But yeah, he went before I got back. Mick McCarthy took over. I think it was like 5 or 6 games before the end of the season. And then I was just back for pre-season training with Mick. So I couldn't speak highly enough of him. He was brilliant with everybody. Doesn't matter whether you're the top man in the first team or you're in the youth team. He was just says it how it is, and yeah, he's a manager that you'd want to work for. Was it Mick McCarthy who you left the club under? Yeah, I mean, again, he was fair. He got me in. I was there and thereabouts, but I was I'm guessing I must have been 22 then, something like that. And he just said, "Look, Rammers, like, there's a contract. I think he was going to say there's a contract here possibly for you, but you need to be playing football. You're not going to get that here." So it was a tough one because you never want to leave your boyhood club, the club I love. But on the other flip of that, you've got to remember you've got a career. Like, to me, I don't think I even realised I had a career. It's like I won the lottery every day. So, like, as much as I wanted to be playing in the first team, it was just an amazing experience. So yeah, we had a conversation, and then it was decided, obviously, like I wouldn't be getting a contract, and I moved on, and that's how it goes in football, isn't it?
And you still kept following Sunderland when you were at other clubs. I hear some stories of you coming up to watch Newcastle in the Sunderland end at Newcastle games and stuff like that. It must have been a good buzz.
Mate, I've never missed a Sunderland Newcastle match in my career. One, I think I missed.
Yeah.
It always panned out either like on a Sunday. So we generally had the day off. Maybe get the odd red card here and there, or
so that was an intentional thing. That
might have been a few tactical things to lead up to the derby days. But no, I didn't miss many. I think I can only count one on Saturday. We got beat 2-0. I think Bellamy scored for them. Apart from that, never missed any. That was, to me, it's my bread and butter. That's the most important thing to me alongside my career. So no way I was missing the Mags matches.
Just back with your time at Sunderland, talk about John Cooke, because he doesn't get talked about a lot. The former Sunderland kitman. I was at his testimonial, which you played in. What was he like, and what was his effect on Sunderland's squad, and what did you make of Sunderland's handling of him? Obviously under different owners now, but it didn't come across well from a fan's point of view, from anybody's point of view, I don't think.
I think not just Cookie, but like the kitman and people like that behind the scenes at the clubs. I don't think people understand how important that is. Day to day, like he's in the change room with the lads constantly. Do you know what I mean? Like having crack and looking after you. And as a young lad, he used to look after us all the time. Like sort you out with boots, sort you out with things. And the players just had the utmost respect for him. Now, to me, obviously, when he left, that's people who are out of touch with football and what the club means to people. You know, when you make decisions like that, he's been at the club for over 20 years, ex-player and what have you. So yeah, I was really upset about how he was treated, as were a lot of the ex-players when they found out the news. So when I got the call to play in that testimonial, that was a little bit out of the blue. I only found out about 3 days beforehand. I was over the moon just to, like I say, go along to support Cookie, but it was nice to go back and get the boots on and see some faces I've probably not seen for 10 or 20 years even.
My favourite part of that game was Peter Reid managing on the side and then subbing himself on because he said that his team were lacking bite in the midfield, and he was actually quite good. I know he's ex-England international, but he is 65 and he was very decent.
Do you know what? You never lose that passion. Doesn't matter how old you are. It's like I'm in my 40s now, and you still have it. Do you know what I mean? Like I think you miss. I don't miss some of the things about being a footballer, but I do miss like the competitive side of things. And like you said, with Reedy and that, like you can see that you still have that. You never lose it.
Yeah, was but before that testimonial, I got the chance to interview Niall Quinn, which to me was just like mad. It was like interviewing God. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't get my words out. It was crackers. But I was talking to him about Cookie, and I mentioned the playoff final against Charlton, the first one, where he was consoling Mickey Gray, and then the fact that he did it for Grant Ledbetter 20 odd years later when we lost against Charlton again at Wembley. And his words were, those were only 2 occasions that you would have seen. He says he was just always there behind the scenes for the lads, as you mentioned.
Totally, that's what I mean. That just sums a man up. But not just him. There's people behind the scenes who make a football club. Mick Holland used to be the masseur. People probably don't know about him, but you need the banter, you need the crack behind the scenes to keep each other going, and it's characters like that, and Cookie and whatever that make the spirit in the change room as much as the players. So yeah, no, Quinny sums it up perfectly. Like I say, that'll have been a weekly occurrence. I've had many a chat with Cookie as a young lad. He'll come in if you've had a bad game, keep your head up, son, and it's what you need. You need characters like that in the club.
Absolutely. Talking to characters, what was Mickey Gray like? Because he comes across as quite the character. Obviously, he was club captain for a long time as well. Local lad like yourself. Did you have a good affinity with him?
I did. Do you know, like, obviously Mickey was in the first team when I was still had my season ticket. Yeah. Booker Park and what have you. So I always looked up to him, and then I was actually on his boots. So when you're YTS, you get given, I think it was 2 or 3 pros who use boots you look after. Yeah. So, like I say, straight away hit it off, got on great with him. He looked after me with me being his boot boy, and although he was a left back and I ended up being a right back, you always like pick things and what you want to attribute. And I used to watch how he'd done things, and he was always the fittest at the club, always running. Like, I know a lot of people say, oh, he loved the high life and going out and what have you, but I tell you what, didn't matter. He was still at the front, and I respected that as well. And I think I modelled myself on that. Every club, I would say, after Sunderland I went to, I was probably the fittest or one of. And for me, it sets the standard. He was the captain of the club after Bally. And you set the tone for the club. So to me, like, when I picked up that from him, probably picked up the drinking from him as well. But like you say, as long as you putting a shift in, and I think people respect that and they don't mind it so much.
You mentioned Kevin Ball there, but obviously you'd have been at Sunderland when, in his latter days, perhaps when you were coming through. Again, he just comes across as a titanic figure at Sunderland and involved for so long afterwards. Sadly, not involved with the club anymore.
I think it's such a shame that he's not part of the club now. Like I say, as a player, as a man, as a leader, he epitomises everything that every single Sunderland fan like yourself and me want in a Sunderland player. So 100%. To have him behind the scenes, whether it be, I couldn't care less if it was the under-8s, whether it's the 16s, whether it's the reserves, whatever, in some sort of capacity, teaching people from the experience he's had throughout his career would be so beneficial. Obviously, there's things that might have gone on in the past and what have you, but I think life's too short. And for me, if I was part of the club now, you'd be looking at getting back in any capacity, because, he epitomises everything that you want in the club.
100%. I think what would be great is, like, who better than Bally to sell Sunderland to young players coming in, like, you know, the French lads or lads from Premier League academies. Who would you want them to talk to as a Sunderland fan to get a flavour? It would be Kevin Ball.
It would. And going back to what I said before, how things have maybe changed a little bit, Bally would bring that sort of maybe a little bit of respect, or, you know, like a bit of grounding for the younger lads who maybe get away with a little bit too much nowadays. I think, obviously, they know they're not going to get away with nothing with Bally. As much as he's an inspiration, as in, he still rings me now, and if you need him, he's at the other end of a phone. And the amount of players or ex-players that I speak to, he's like that with all of them. And this is like 20, 30 years on. So to me, to have that around the young lads at a club would be brilliant. And hopefully things change and he does come back in at some point.
I think what actually gets lost when we're talking about Bally as well is that, like, he's a really, really good coach by all accounts. I mean, just look at the England team where you've got Pickford and Henderson, who both wax lyrical about him.
He is. So, like, I went from obviously playing alongside him a little bit when I was trying to break through. When I came back from Notts County, he was the reserve team sort of. I wouldn't say he was the manager. It was Jockey Scott, but he was alongside him. So every day, if we weren't in the first team, we were with Bally. And he does, like, people probably think he just gets you to go out there and just 2-foot walls and things or whatever. But he's not. Like, he's really switched on tactically. The way he speaks to people, his sessions he puts on. To me, like, I just think it's a shame. I really do. And I'm not the only one. Everyone you speak to who knows him, or any fan would say the same, I think.
Absolutely. We'll come on to modern day matters in a second. But so what are you up to now, Simon, in terms of your career and your new ventures you've got going on?
Yeah. Well, I retired when I was 34. had a couple of years, a few years of just podding about, and I think you lose your purpose a little bit when you retire. It is a strange time for anyone, I think. So I struggled with that. But after lockdown, I decided I've always been, like we spoke on before, I've always been passionate about fitness. Always have been. Love my fitness. Love helping people. So I started up my own training facility, training camp, you would call it. Just started on the seafront, just with some friends, and I've grown it from there. I'm now based at the Beacon of Light next to the stadium. Do classes every day, and yeah, I absolutely love it. There's people that come from 14, 15, 16-year-olds up to 70-year-olds, a mixture of ages, fitness levels, and I just want to make it as friendly as an environment as possible, help people, whether it be even mindset. It's not all just about losing weight. I just like helping people in general. So, yeah, I'm loving it. It's something to get my teeth into. It's hard graft. Like, I'm up at 5 o'clock every morning, but it's so rewarding when you see people turning their lives around.
I had a look at some of the videos on social media, which looked great, and two things stood out. It was the little lad and his father competing against each other. I thought that was absolutely class. But then I realised it was at 6 o'clock in the morning as well. So they're out of bed at 6 o'clock in the morning, and the place was rammed, which is an achievement, getting that many people down there at that time.
Do you know what? Like, the two that you're on about, Eddie and his son Tom, they come every day. Like, for his son, I think he's 13 or 14. To have that dedication before school, come with your dad is incredible. I absolutely love him. But not just him. The 6 o'clock class in the morning is probably the most popular one. Apart from Monday night, the dedication some people show, like I say, like I do it. It's my job though to do it and put the classes on. But for people to get off their own, to do it off their own back and get out of bed at that time when it's pitch black and in December especially and stuff, that gives me all the purpose I need every day. I love it.
Absolutely, fair play to them. Starts the day off right. We were talking there about before we came on the recording, just talking about Wembley and Sheffield Wednesday games and stuff. You actually attend pretty much every game you can these days, don't you?
Yeah, I've got 4 season tickets, I should say. I've got 3 girls, 3 daughters. Mm-hmm. A little bit of a schoolboy era. I bought us season tickets this year in the southwest corner where everyone stands up, and I've got a 4-year-old to see now. But no, we go to as many games as we can. I don't get to as many away games now as I'd like to because I have a Saturday morning class, and a lot of the lads will be leaving on the bus at God knows what time and stuff. So, but yeah, I love. My home games have changed dramatically from before when it used to be going with your mates and going on the drink, and now I love taking the girls. They love going to see Samson and Delilah and getting the photos, and no, it's great. I love it.
And what do you make of the team? Because for me, I'm 28 and I started going in sort of 2004, so I can remember Quinn and Phillips being at the club, but I don't really remember the football too much. I've seen videos and stuff and heard the stories, but for me, this is some of the best football I've seen Sunderland play. I know there was the Gus Poyet era in the Premier League, getting to Wembley and all of that, but I think football's maybe moved on a bit technically since then even, and I think this is some of the nicest football I've seen Sunderland play for a long time. I wonder what your perspective is on that, given you were in and around the Quinns and the Phillipses.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some bad football. I mean, I started going in 85, I think was my first game. And then it was like I say, that was a good period under Dennis Smith for a spell. But after that, like Terry Butcher, Mick Buxton, a spell under Martin Crosby, apart from the cup final, there's been some bad times. But I think, like you say there, at the minute, the football we play is just different class. And I think because it is a young team, they just go out and express themselves. I don't feel, looking at them, like they don't look as if they feel any pressure. It's like they embrace it. Whereas in times gone by, like, I don't know, even like the Premier League era or whatever, we're signing players who I think the pressure got to them at times. I think playing at Sunderland in front of 30, 40,000, a lot of players couldn't handle that. And fair play to some of these young lads because like I said, I've played in front of crowds like that, but not on a regular basis. I mean, I was lucky enough when I was at Motherwell to play at Celtic and Rangers and stuff. And trust me, it's not easy when you've got that amount of people in there to go out and express yourself. So to some of these young lads who've only just even made the debut to go out and do what they're doing, I think it's different class.
I think Tony Mowbray seems to be key in that as well. Obviously I'd followed Tony Mowbray's career, but not all that closely. I didn't realise actually his track record with young players and just how good he is with them. He did it with Harvey Elliott at Blackburn and Harrison Reed, players like that. And he seems really to have that sort of, and I don't want to patronise him or anything, but he seems to have a proper fatherly touch as well as being, a good man manager, motivator, and obviously a decent tactician as well.
Do you know the key for me? I mean, I don't know how many managers I've played under, like a lot, but the key for me is you need to know how to treat people and get the best out of them to be a good man manager. Now, you can have all the qualifications you want in the world. I don't care if you've got a license coming out your backside. You need to be able to get players on side, get them to want to do well for you, and create a good environment for them day to day. And you can see that from a million miles away, that every single player, when they go out there, are wanting to do well for him. And I don't think we've had that at spells before. So to me, he just looks like he probably hold his hands up himself. I'm sure I heard him say something before. He's no Pep Guardiola. He's not the best tactician in the world, but he's got people around him who do that part. He's a man motivator. Do you know what I mean? So to me, I think, like I say, when he was appointed, I think a lot of us were unsure how it was going to go. Especially after last season and Alex Neil, everyone was pretty disappointed how that happened. But fair play. Like, I think, are we overachieving? I don't know. But what we're doing is brilliant. And win, lose or draw, you're actually coming away thinking, do you know what? That was a good match. They give it their all. Like the week or other games we've been, we might not have won, but it's nice to watch, isn't it?
It is nice to watch, and you can forgive them for a few faults because they are so young, I think, as well. And the likes of Ndongs and Kones and Dillabodjis over the years, did they really care? I don't think so. I think this lot genuinely do care. You mentioned Alex Neil there. I just want to pick up on him, and obviously he went to Stoke, but we had such a good run with him towards the back end of the League One season. What was your instant reaction when that news broke? I'm guessing the same as the rest of us.
Yeah, I think shocked, bit gutted, to be honest, because I felt we had a bit of going for the first time in a few years.
Obviously, typical Sunderland, isn't it?
Yeah, well, there you go. It's just typical Sunderland. Like, when you just think things are going great, something generally happens, doesn't it? So, you think you get used to it now. But no, I was a bit gutted. And like I say, when Tony Mowbray was appointed, I wouldn't say I was ecstatic about that either. But I've not heard anybody, like I say a bad word about him. I think the way he speaks in his interviews, he's honest, he's upfront. He's from the northeast. I know he's from like Borough way, but he's from the northeast. He gets it. He gets what it means to the players and to the people up here. And I think going back to the players, if you see them giving 100%, which they are, then like you say, you don't mind them making mistakes. We've had so many. I'll even call them mercenaries. We have had mercenaries in the past that are going through the motions or coming here for a payday, and they don't care if we get relegated or whatever. They'll just move on. These lads don't, or they don't seem to be. They're just giving it their all, and I think that's why the crowds are what they are this season. We're fans are as incredible as always, and we're just getting right behind them. It's class.
The feeling of the club feels very different under Louis Dreyfus now from what it did under Methven and Donald. How did you see that disastrous part of Sunderland's recent history? It started off well, didn't it? But it didn't really end well, and there was a lot of PR disasters, shall we say? Yeah,
that's it. I don't know. Like at the minute, let me turn this telly off there. Sorry.
No worries.
That in the background. To me, like I say, at the minute, it feels as if all the decisions behind are just spot on and what the people of this area want. Whereas I don't think Stuart Donald and Charlie Methven really got the area, got how people are. Do you know what I mean? And I don't know. I never really took to them. Yeah, initially it was something fresh, and after Ellis Short left, we did need a change. But I think the way things have panned out, I think it's definitely worked for the best.
No, absolutely. We'll round off by talking about transfers, Simon, because it's still a hot topic of conversation. Is that striker situation? Isn't it? Obviously Ross Stewart getting injured wasn't ideal. He had Ellis Sims being recalled. Gelhardt's come in, looks like a decent enough player, but very different to Ross Stewart. What's been your take on the whole thing? And I guess Christian Speakman as well as a sporting director, who he seems to polarise opinion amongst some Sunderland fans. I quite like him. I like what he's done, but the striker issue is, well, it's a bit of an issue at the end of the day, isn't it?
I think it's just unfortunate how close to the end of the window it happened.
Yeah.
Now, if that had been the weekend beforehand, I'd like to have thought we would have got someone in. I think Ellis Sims was the one. Even if Dye should have been in Everton a little bit earlier, maybe a week earlier, he might have got someone in. And I think the timing had a lot to do with it. I understand what the club is saying. They're not just going to sign someone for the sake of signing it. So I get that. It's got to be the right fit. But it is just a shame. Like, even watching the other night against Fulham, like, having someone like I say, as a defender, having an outlet. Sometimes when you're under pressure, Ross Stewart was incredible at just holding the ball up, maybe taking a foul, giving us a breather. Not only that, obviously he could run in behind as well. But I think that's going to be the only thing at the minute is having that outlet, someone to hit or get us up the pitch. So I've not seen the new lad yet from Leeds, so looking forward to seeing how he gets on tomorrow.
Absolutely. What are your expectations generally for the season now, do you reckon? Because I think with a fit Ross Stewart, you're sort of thinking, we could maybe sneak the playoffs here. But then again, you never know. We might still if Gelhardt hits the ground running.
Do you know what? Momentum's such a big thing in football, and seems like we carried it on from last season. We don't fear anyone, and there isn't anybody to fear in this league. Yeah, Burnley came up and probably the best this season, and they're going to win the league by the looks of it. Take them out of it, we've been as good as, or if not better than, the majority that we've come up against this season. So we've got no fears, and why not aim for the playoffs? If we don't hit it, no one expected it before the season came. If we end up finishing mid-table or so, then great. And then, like you say, invest again in the summer and go for it then.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us, mate. I really appreciate it. Do you want to tell everybody just about where they can find the fitness classes, how you get involved if they want to, etc., etc.?
No problem. Yeah, I've got obviously I've got my own Facebook page. It's SR Functional Fitness. SR Fitness Life is on Instagram. So all the classes currently are based at the Beacon of Light next to the stadium, and probably the middle of next month in March, some of the 6 a.m. classes will be starting to move outside on the seafront. So, well, to be fair, you cannot beat it. When on a nice morning when in front of the sea training, it's great. So yeah, they'll be starting soon. But yeah, it's all going great. And if anybody wants to come along, more than welcome.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining, mate. Really appreciate it. And thanks to the listener as ever for listening. You can find all of our content over at the Sunderland Echo website. And once again, cheers.